There's something that almost no woman realizes, and it quietly sabotages their relationships. Because when they ask themselves what men really want, they're already asking the wrong question. The truth is, the most mature, emotionally available men don't fall in love with a performance. They fall in love with presence. And once you understand what truly turns a man on psychologically, you stop chasing and start choosing who deserves your energy. In this video, I'll show you 11 traits that not only make a man want to be with you, but keep him captivated by you. In many women's emotional lives, there comes a quiet moment when, without even realizing it, they begin to transform. It's not something big, dramatic, or visible to the outside world, but inside, it's as if something very deep either shuts off or finally switches back on. This moment usually comes after exhaustion, after years of trying to please, to win over, to attract and hold the attention of men who were never ready or only saw the surface. At that moment, a reverse energy is born. A woman doesn't give up on love, she gives up on the effort. And that changes everything. Reverse energy is a powerful psychological principle that most people still don't understand. It works like an emotional paradox, powerfully attracting exactly what's the opposite of what women were taught from a young age. Women are taught, explicitly or subtly, that they have to do something to be chosen. Dress a certain way, speak charmingly, showcase their value, show just the right amount of interest, create empathy. All of that builds an emotional repertoire of performing. The problem is the right man doesn't respond to a performance. He responds to substance. A mature man who's been through surface-level experiences and grown tired of them reacts completely differently. His limbic system, the part of the brain tied to deep emotions and survival in relationships, responds not to appearances, but to presence. And presence can't be faked, it can only be felt. A man notices, even if unconsciously, when he meets a woman who doesn't want to convince him. It creates dissonance for him. He's used to women who try. When he encounters someone who simply is, it grabs his attention. Reverse energy activates what Carl Jung would call the tension of opposites. A man's unconscious is culturally trained to hunt, to seek out a woman who's interested and available. But what truly ignites psychological desire is contrast. When a woman is present but not performing, when she's receptive but not overly accessible, when she's authentic but not craving validation. This triggers a different mechanism, the mechanism of emotional curiosity. Just because a woman stops trying doesn't mean she closes herself off. It all falls into place on its own. They come back together. Her eyes don't seek reassurance, her words don't look for approval. Her energy doesn't plead for reciprocity. For a man who's lived long enough to appreciate depth, it's like a beacon amidst endless repetition. A woman who's not trying awakens everything in him. But be careful, this energy isn't apathy, it's not indifference, and certainly not contempt. Reverse energy is the result of inner integration. It's the outcome of a woman who's worked so hard on her inner worth that she no longer feels obligated to prove that worth to anyone else. She shows up as she is, and that makes her magnetic. That's the essence of effortless power. In neuroscience, there's a phenomenon called involuntary attention. It happens when something stands out from the norm in a subtle way. A woman trying to seduce is part of the norm. A woman who's not trying breaks the script. She triggers a man's involuntary attention, and now he's trying to figure out what makes her so special. In this state, he generates what I call an emotional inversion field. A man feels that he needs to earn the space she offers, and this feeling is rare because for the first time he senses he's not being judged. He's free to choose. But that freedom comes at a cost. Emotional responsibility. He has to rise to the occasion. Women who activate this energy report an interesting phenomenon. When they stop seeking attention, they start receiving deeper gazes. When they stop trying to be liked, they earn more respect. When they stop shaping themselves to fit expectations, they attract more authentic connections. Because a man who recognizes this energy is also tired of games, and he's looking for exactly what she's become, a real space. There's a neurological reason behind it. The human brain values what's scarce. A woman who's not constantly in plain sight activates the part of the brain responsible for processing perceived value. She's not unavailable, she's selective. And that's deeply stimulating because suddenly he feels he has to be emotionally present or he'll miss out on something precious. Not just company, but a rare kind of feminine energy, the kind that doesn't need to prove she's admired. This shift, this inversion, also transforms the woman internally because it's not just about attracting a man, it's about leaving the mode of emotional survival, where everything is done to be accepted, and entering the mode of genuine self-expression. A woman who finds her own truth seeks love not as a crutch, but as an expansion. And that changes everything, because from that moment on, she doesn't ask for space. She takes it. He doesn't ask for connection, he shares it. She doesn't shrink to be chosen. She grows, and those who want to can follow. This energy creates an atmosphere that can't be faked. It's built on the quiet of inner decisions, on self-care that's not meant to be seen but to be felt. When a man senses this, he tunes in to a different frequency of connection. He's no longer in the game of conquest, he's in the field of presence. And this isn't just arousing, it's transformative. At this point in the video, I'm asking you, if this made you see things in a new light, please subscribe to the channel, because what's coming next will go even deeper. And if this content resonates with you, please leave a comment below. I've decided to stop trying. Let's see how many of us are ready to flip that switch together. Few women realize this. Silence has a frequency. And when it comes from a place of inner security, it becomes one of the most powerful forms of emotional magnetism. Most women have learned to fill space with words, explanations, justifications, stories, as if emptiness were dangerous. But an emotionally mature man isn't attracted to excessive words, he's drawn to the space words don't occupy. This is one of the most unsettling truths of the psychology of desire. Appropriate silence isn't absence, it's amplified presence. A man's mind, especially after many years of surface-level or performative relationships, develops a particular sensitivity to the rhythm of communication. And what grabs his attention the most isn't what's spoken quickly, but what unfolds with cadence, with pauses, with breath. Because a pause carries something no words can. Anticipation. The male brain is biologically wired to seek meaning. It scans for patterns, trying to predict moves, and when it finds a space that can't be immediately explained, it switches on. Absence becomes a mystery. Silence becomes the focal point. A woman who can command silence commands attention. But be careful. We're not talking about cold, calculating, or punitive silence. We're talking about magnetic silence. The kind that comes from a woman who doesn't need to fill the space to assert her presence, who doesn't need to explain herself to justify her worth, who doesn't need to rush to gain approval. In psychology, there's a phenomenon called unresolved sensory expectations. It's when the brain starts a cycle of interpretation and doesn't complete it. Strategic silence creates exactly that. A space of interpretation, a call to fantasy. An imagination once activated is infinitely more powerful than any explanatory speech. Men describe this type of woman with phrases like, "There's something else about her that I can't explain." What they don't realize is that that something is precisely what she chose not to say, what she left hanging in the air, what she allowed him to feel without slapping a label on it. And this is where the crucial turning point arrives. Women who talk too much often do so because of anxiety in relationships. It's an unconscious attempt to assert control. But an emotionally available man isn't looking for control, he's looking for connection. And real connection doesn't come from excess. It comes from balance between what's revealed and what's withheld. A patient once told me, I was afraid silence would look like disinterest, so I kept talking. The problem is, excessive talk doesn't communicate interest, it communicates neediness. And a mature man is exquisitely sensitive to that difference. A woman who can pause, take a breath, and allow others to think conveys something very rare: emotional stability. And that stability is perceived as a sign of depth. It's like music with space between the notes. And it's in that space that emotion takes hold. Imagine a date, a moment of connection. Instead of filling every second with conversation, she allows silence. He looks into your eyes, he listens with presence. He's not waiting for the next line. For a man, that moment becomes not just memorable, but hypnotic, because he feels something he almost never feels: emotional calm paired with creative tension. That's the pinnacle of psychological desire. Men often find it hard to put into words, but they describe it as, time flows differently with her. They say her presence creates a pause in the emotional noise of the world, and that pause is where attraction burns brightest. In a time when everything happens instantly, when everyone has an answer ready, when content floods in abundance, a woman who knows how to wait, how to read, rather than rush to consume, becomes an exception. And every exception is magnetic. Now I'd like to give you a gentle challenge. Observe the impact of silence on your encounters. Notice how the other person reacts when you stop explaining, when you hold back part of your story, when you pause after an important statement. It's in that interval that true connection unfolds. And if this moment has made you reconsider how you communicate, if it's shifted something fundamental for you, subscribe to the channel now, because we'll continue exploring deeper layers of the psychology of attraction. And if you've ever felt like you talk too much and still aren't understood, maybe it's time to discover the power hidden in the words you don't say. There's a type of woman who leaves things behind not just in memory, but in what neuroscientists call emotional reverberation. A lingering echo of an experience that didn't end when the meeting did. She doesn't need grand gestures, clever phrases, or exaggerated presence. What she needs is to be genuinely felt, because that's what resonates. Most people believe seduction happens in the moment, in the look, in the conversation, in the chemistry right there, face to face. But that's just the surface. What truly consumes a man emotionally is what happens afterward. It's when he closes the door, drives home, and for some reason can't get you out of his head. Even if the conversation was simple, even if the touch was brief, even if nothing major happened. And that's the power of understanding what you leave behind. A man's brain, especially after age 35, develops a very specific neurological filter to cope with excessive emotional stimulation. It becomes selective. He starts ignoring the superficial and focuses on what's precious. A woman capable of creating reverberation is one who, even in simple moments, leaves emotional imprints that don't follow a pattern. But what's the secret? It's absence charged with presence. When he leaves, he carries with him not the lightness she evoked, the glance she gave without haste, the cozy silence they shared. Those things stay in the air. They linger in his sensory memory. It's as if she leaves a magnetic field behind. He misses it, though he may not realize that what he's missing is the reverberation. And there's something even more powerful. This effect doesn't come from trying to impress. It comes from the opposite. When a woman is so centered, so deeply rooted in who she is, that she doesn't feel the need to leave a mark. And that is precisely when she leaves the biggest mark. It happens because a man's brain detects what's real with much greater sensitivity than you might think. When there's no anxiety, no effort, no performance, a man relaxes. And it's in that state of relaxation that memories form more intensely. Reverberation is also sensory. It's not just what she said. It's the rhythm of her speech, the tone of her voice, the timing between sentences, the pause before answering, the way she listens, not reacting, but truly being there. When a woman listens with presence and speaks with intention, she creates micro-impressions in a man's mind that he may only notice later, but he will feel them. And this is where one of the brain's most fascinating mechanisms emerges: the memory of absence. Men remember a woman much more vividly when she leaves him with something he hasn't quite figured out yet, something he wants to explore further. When it's measured, when she hasn't revealed everything, when she hasn't said it all. This isn't a game. It's emotional elegance. This woman isn't hiding, but she also isn't over-explaining herself. And in that balance, she triggers what Jung would call the projectable shadow, the part of a man seeking what he doesn't yet know. He finds himself thinking about her, not out of neediness, but out of emotional curiosity. She's become a wonderful mystery. This is precisely where many women sabotage their own energy. They feel the need to make sure they're understood, wanted, and acknowledged, and in trying to control how they're perceived, they destroy the mystery. They interrupt the reverberation. The more you try to ensure emotional presence, the more it slips away. The secret is to trust what was felt. It means allowing the space after the encounter to speak for you. This technique works because it operates on extended emotional time. It plants a seed, And as time goes on in the days that follow, fragments of the experience with you keep flashing back to him. A phrase, a gesture, an unexpected smile, a moment of silence that for some reason had a calming effect. This is what we call a secondary emotional impression, where the impact isn't immediate but long-lasting. Here's what's important. Not every man is ready for this kind of woman because it demands something from him that few have developed: depth of perception. But that's precisely why it's so memorable. Because when she meets a man who's had a lot of superficial experiences, she's like a new language. He feels it, but he doesn't yet know how to name it, and that lack of understanding keeps him connected. What triggers reverberation isn't an excess of energy. It's its quality, a lightness that isn't shallow, a depth that isn't overwhelming, a presence that doesn't demand attention, a connection that doesn't insist on immediate reciprocity. It's a type of energy a man holds on to, even if he doesn't want to, because his body has recorded it, because his nervous system has registered it, and when he least expects it, he remembers you. Tell me in the comments, have you ever remembered something you didn't even realize you'd forgotten? Any woman who has ever felt too constrained, misunderstood, or pressured to fit into a mold will recognize herself here. There's a type of woman who evokes something rare in men. She activates a state of sustained, almost instinctive attention. And this happens not because she's impressive or because she's using seduction strategies, but precisely because she deviates from the norm. He looks at her, and he can't immediately decode her. Emotionally mature men with a certain level of emotional intelligence aren't attracted to predictability. A man's mind has evolved to detect patterns, solve problems, unravel puzzles. And when a woman fits perfectly into the conventional narrative, the woman who wants to be liked, who talks, who reveals everything on the first date, he registers it, evaluates it, and moves on. But when she introduces nuance, when her opinions aren't obvious, when her mood shifts with emotional coherence, something in him wakes up. He senses there's life there, complexity, emotional and intellectual depth. You can't put that into a box, so it keeps coming back to him, even if he doesn't understand why. This is what I call archetypal disruption. It shatters an unconscious expectation he didn't even know he had. And it keeps him hooked because if he can't categorize it, he can't predict the next move. And genuine, effortless unpredictability activates an ancient mechanism, the mechanism that keeps him awake and emotionally present. Because she doesn't fit into any label, this woman doesn't have to run away from what she finds valuable. She can be rational and sensitive, firm and gentle, focused and provocative. She allows herself to be multifaceted because she's already made peace with her own contradictions, and that inner peace makes her magnetic, because the man realizes he's facing a living, breathing person, not a performance. And here we come to one of the most powerful tools in the psychology of desire: inner narrative tension. A woman who carries multiple layers, who doesn't reveal everything at once, has the same effect on a man as a great story. He wants to turn the next page. This isn't manipulation. It's genuine emotional depth. When he realizes that every conversation might reveal something new, that each encounter has its own flavor, that she's consistent but unpredictable, he starts associating being in her presence with constant curiosity. And constant curiosity is the fuel of sustained desire. This woman doesn't do it strategically. She simply lives that way because she has her own vibrant inner life. She has real interests, unanswered questions, passions that move her, ideas she's still developing. This creates what I call uncharted territory. A man who finds this in a woman feels like he's always discovering something new, and his brain, which easily grows bored of the familiar, responds with emotional arousal. Predictability kills desire. A woman he can't define keeps his mind engaged. She challenges him not through confrontation, but through authenticity. He can't put a name to what he feels, and that's precisely why he keeps feeling it. She doesn't force herself to be different. She simply refuses to erase the parts of herself that don't fit into familiar boxes. She's who she is, and that takes courage. Courage to be misunderstood. Courage not to be liked by everyone. Courage not to constantly explain herself. And that quiet courage has a devastating impact on attractiveness. She's perceived as a woman who's not trying to impress, and therefore she impresses. Few people realize that this unpredictability does not equal instability. She doesn't change her opinions out of uncertainty, but because she's constantly expanding internally. Her convictions aren't dogmas, they're starting points. She thinks, reflects, changes, evolves. This makes her intellectually stimulating. Men feel they have to stay sharp to keep up with her. And that attentiveness becomes a powerful form of emotional connection. This woman also understands the art of gradual revelation. She shares her feelings in due time. She doesn't reveal her entire story on the first date. Not because she's hiding something, but because she knows that real intimacy is built in layers. Each new encounter deepens the connection without exhausting the mystery. It creates an emotional trail a man wants to follow. And the more he discovers, the more he realizes there's still so much left to discover. There's also a psychoneurological effect at work here. A man's brain activates its reward system when it perceives emotional progression. It's the same thing that happens in a good story. We want to know what happens next. By living fully rather than mechanically, this woman becomes a living story. And men who seek more than mere companionship, who seek meaning, become emotionally attached to her. She doesn't need external approval because she's already approved of herself, and you can feel that energy. She looks you in the eyes without flinching. She states her opinions without offending. She changes her mind without losing her essence. And because none of this fits into any neat category, it becomes unique, uncategorizable, unforgettable. He can't slot this woman into any box, and that's precisely why he never wants to stop trying to figure her out. If this idea resonates with you, subscribe, because the next point might be the most meaningful of all. Throughout this video, we've delved deeply into the elements that spark psychological desire in emotionally mature men. But now it's time to reveal something few women expect to hear. The real turning point, the emotional pivot. Because despite everything we've talked about so far, there's an even greater truth. The right man isn't someone you need to win over. He's someone actively searching for exactly the woman you're becoming. This realization changes everything. Most women have spent years believing that real love will arrive once they finally become good enough. Good enough to be chosen. Good enough not to be left. Good enough to be loved unconditionally. Fueled by insecurity, past experiences, and even superficial advice, this mindset has created a silent narrative of emotional scarcity. The belief that men are prizes to be won. But men who are truly worth it, emotionally available, self-aware, mature, are also exhausted by the games, masks, and relationships where they have to present an unrealistic version of themselves to be accepted. Superficial relationships hurt them too. They too have felt the burden of being seen only as providers or as someone's fantasy of stability. Like you, they're also searching for something real. And here's the key: the woman you become. Cultivating emotional presence, authenticity, and inner sovereignty doesn't just become more attractive. She becomes a reflection of exactly what the mature man is searching for, even if he doesn't yet have the words for it. So when that meeting happens, it feels different. It's not euphoria. It's not an uncontrollable adrenaline rush. It's recognition. A kind of peace that's almost unsettling because it's so rare. It's the feeling that finally you can lower your defenses. You don't have to prove anything. You can simply be. This pivot is crucial because it places the woman back in the leading role. Not as someone who needs to be seduced, but as someone who chooses. You're no longer trying to fit into a mold. You're building your own way of loving, feeling, living, and communicating. And when the right man discovers it, he doesn't panic. He's captivated. Because he's tired of desperately searching for what only exists when emotional depth is present. He's weary of intensity without stability, beauty without presence, performance without soul. And if you've made it this far into this video, maybe it's time to turn that inner wrench. It's no longer about trying to be attractive to just anyone. It's about understanding that your quiet transformation will be felt by those who've also evolved. You don't have to rush. You don't have to force data points. The man who sees your soul behind your smile isn't the man you need to run away from. He's the one who walks beside you. I've seen it happen in therapy sessions for many years. Women move from the desperation for external validation to the quiet power of self-choosing. And when that happens, almost like magic, A man with the same level of maturity appears. But it's not magic, it's synchronicity. The universe matches those who are whole. This reunion between authentic femininity and conscious masculinity doesn't happen by accident. It's the result of mutual emotional preparation. It's not about romantic idealizations, it's a psychological reality. Even emotionally mature men are waking up. They're beginning to realize that the woman who attracts them most is the one who lives autonomously, who knows herself, who doesn't turn every emotion into drama, but instead into inner dialogue and practical wisdom. And here's an even deeper detail. This type of man isn't simply looking for a partner to share his life with. He's seeking a woman who can become his ally in the process of personal growth. Someone who inspires him, challenges him gently, and brings peace without sacrificing depth. He doesn't need a therapist. He doesn't need a mother. He needs a presence that invites truth. And truth is never loud. It's quietly magnetic. Many women still believe they need to be the most impressive version of themselves to attract a valuable man. But the truth is, the more you try to impress, the further you drift from your essence, and the more you repel precisely the man you wish to attract. Because a mature man isn't looking for a woman who seduces him. He's looking for a woman who moves him emotionally, effortlessly, simply by being herself. The trick is to understand that your path of emotional growth is perceived in real time by a mind operating on the same frequency. And this isn't mysticism, it's behavioral neuroscience. Regulated, mature, and centered minds recognize each other. The field of attraction between two emotionally stable people is different, quieter, slower, more genuine, and far more enduring. You don't need to appear the most beautiful, the funniest, or the smartest. You simply need to stand out as a whole. That's rare. That's emotional gold. And that's precisely what the right man is looking for too. If this idea has surprised you, right now I understand, and subscribe, because this is only a small part of what I want to show you. You don't need another script. You only need to remember who you are when no one's watching. Because that's exactly the version of you the right man is looking for.